Mother announced that my deceased father wasn't my real dad, and that the man she'd been having an affair with was. Then she expected him to walk me down the aisle, so I banned her from my wedding and cut her off completely. The wedding rehearsal was supposed to be a simple, intimate gathering, a time for close family and friends to come together before the big day. I, 25F, had been planning this wedding for over a year, and while I expected some hiccups, I could never have predicted what my mother had in store for me. Had always known she had a flair for the dramatic. She thrived on attention, always needing to be the center of everything. Still, I had hoped that for once, just this once, she would let the spotlight shine on me. After all, it was my wedding, my moment. But in the days leading up to the rehearsal dinner, I had started noticing little things that made me uneasy. She had been way too excited about the event. More excited than someone should be for a simple dinner. She kept dropping vague hints about a special surprise she had planned, something that would change everything. When I pressed her for details, she simply smiled and told me that I would understand soon enough. I had assumed it was something sentimental, maybe an old childhood keepsake or a heartfelt letter. I figured she wanted to make a grand speech, but I never imagined it would be anything beyond an overly emotional tribute to our family. My fiancé, Luke, 26M, told me not to worry. He had met my mother enough times to know that she liked to make a scene, but assured me that whatever it was, we'd handle it together. When we arrived at the venue, I was too caught up in the excitement of seeing everyone to pay much attention to my mother's behavior. The evening started beautifully. My bridesmaids were buzzing with excitement, Luke's parents were chatting with my relatives, and the energy in the room felt warm and full of love. Even my mother seemed to be on her best behavior at first. She mingled, laughed, and acted like the proud mother of the bride. She hugged Luke like he was her own son, showering him with compliments about how lucky I was to have him. If I hadn't known her better, I would have thought she was just another happy parent eager to see her daughter get married. Then, about an hour into the evening, she stood up and clinked her glass, signaling for everyone's attention. I wasn't surprised she had mentioned wanting to give a speech, and at that moment, I was just relieved she had waited until most of the toasts were over. The room quieted, and everyone turned their attention to her. She took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with what I thought were happy tears. She started by talking about how much she loved me, and how proud she was of the woman I had become. She reminisced about my childhood, sharing sweet, slightly embarrassing stories about my younger years. I felt myself relax a little. Maybe this wouldn't be as bad as I had feared. But then, she took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and said that there was something she had been keeping from me my entire life. Something she believed was finally time to reveal. I felt my stomach twist. She said that fate had a strange way of working, and sometimes, things happened exactly as they were meant to. She said that while she had mourned my father's passing like everyone else, she had also come to realize that his death had been a necessary step toward the truth finally coming out. The room was silent. She then turned to her husband, the man she had married just a year ago, and smiled. She called him the love of her life, the man she was always meant to be with. And then she dropped the bombshell. She told the entire room that the man I had grown up calling my father wasn't actually my biological father. That her husband, this man she claimed she had only met a year ago, was actually my real father. I heard a few gasps from the guests, but I couldn't react. I just sat there, frozen, my mind struggling to catch up with what I had just heard. Like, what the hell? She reached into her purse, pulled out an envelope, and held it up proudly. She said she had taken the liberty of getting a DNA test done, and that the results confirmed what she had always known deep in her heart. She said this was my wedding gift. The shock had barely settled before she took it even further. She revealed that her relationship with her husband had been going on for decades. That my entire life, my father, the man who raised me, who loved me, who supported me, had unknowingly been raising another man's child. I felt my Luke squeeze my hand, but I couldn't even bring myself to look at him. She said she had planned on telling me earlier, but she didn't want to ruin my childhood. But now that I was getting married, now that I was starting a new chapter in my life, she felt that the timing was perfect. She said it was a sign that everything had worked out as it was always meant to. And then she ended her speech by saying that she expected us all to move forward, to embrace this revelation, and to celebrate the fact that I finally knew the truth. She smiled at me like she had just handed me the greatest gift in the world. I couldn't even speak. The room was completely silent. Not a single person clapped. There were no cheers, no words of congratulations like she was delusional enough to expect. Just stunned silence. I felt my face burning. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My hands were shaking. My mother had just obliterated my entire reality in front of all my loved ones, and she was expecting me to be grateful? The silence after my mother's speech was suffocating. I felt like I had been hit by a truck, my entire world tilting on its axis while everyone around me sat in stunned disbelief. I bet they were expecting it to be a prank. I hoped it was. My mother just stood there, smiling expectantly as if waiting for me to throw my arms around her and thank her for this wonderful revelation. Meanwhile, my so-called real father sat beside her, looking far too comfortable for a man who had just been revealed as a lifelong affair partner. Luke was the first to move. I felt his grip on my hand tighten as he leaned in close, his voice low but firm as he asked if I wanted to leave. That was when I finally snapped back into reality. No, I said, I wasn't going to leave my own rehearsal dinner just because my mother decided to hijack it for her own soap opera moment. But I needed a second. I pushed my chair back and stood up. All eyes were on me, waiting for some kind of reaction. My mother looked pleased as if she had just gifted me the most valuable piece of information I could ever receive. I could see the smugness in her eyes, the self-satisfaction of someone who believed she had just orchestrated the most heartwarming moment in family history. I needed to get away from her before I did something I'd regret. Without a word, I turned and walked toward the exit, feeling Luke follow closely behind. As soon as we stepped outside into the cool evening air, I let out the breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My hands were still shaking, and my heart was pounding out of control. I turned to Luke, barely able to form words. Did that really just happen? He ran a hand through his hair, looking just as dumbfounded as I felt. Yeah, he said, that really just happened. I pressed my fingers to my temples, trying to process everything. My mother had been lying to me my entire life. My father, my real father, the man who raised me, died without ever knowing the truth. And now, just days before my wedding, she decided to reveal that I had been nothing more than the product of a decades-long affair. Luke asked if I wanted to go back in or if I wanted to leave for the night. I wasn't going to let my mother run me out of my own event. I needed to go back in, but I wasn't doing it without a plan. Even though it may be a rage-induced plan. After a few deep breaths, I squared my shoulders and walked back inside. The room was still eerily quiet when we returned. My mother had settled back into her seat, chatting away with my so-called biological father as if nothing had happened. Some guests were whispering amongst themselves, while others kept throwing nervous glances in my direction. They were confused about whether to leave or stay. I took my seat, but this time, I didn't look at my mother. I didn't acknowledge her or the man sitting beside her. I acted as if they didn't exist. It took a few minutes, but slowly, the conversations in the room started to pick back up. People were still uncomfortable, but at least they were trying to move forward and not make it awkward. That was when my mother, seemingly unable to handle not being the center of attention for more than 5 minutes, spoke again. She said she understood that I was overwhelmed, but she really hoped I would take this news as the blessing it was. She said that fate had given me a second chance to have a real relationship with my biological father, and she hoped that, in time, I would come to see the beauty in that. I stared at her, barely able to believe the words coming out of her mouth. She wasn't apologizing. She wasn't acknowledging how deeply inappropriate her announcement had been. She was trying to spin this as some kind of heartwarming family reunion like this was all meant to be. I told her she was out of her mind if she thought I was going to just accept this and move on. I said that she had not only lied to me my entire life but had used my father's death as some kind of justification for finally revealing the truth. And on top of that, she did it in the most humiliating, self-centered way possible by making my wedding rehearsal all about her. Her face fell as if she had expected nothing but gratitude from me. She said she didn't understand why I was reacting this way. She said that in the end, I was still me, and having a different biological father didn't change that. I told her it changed everything. I told her that my dad, my real dad, had loved me unconditionally, without ever knowing the truth, and she had let him go to his grave believing in a lie. And then I asked her the one question that had been burning in my mind since the moment she dropped this bombshell. Did my dad ever suspect? Her eyes flickered with something, guilt, maybe, or discomfort, but she shook her head. She said that as far as she knew, my dad had never questioned my paternity. He raised me as his own without hesitation. And that was the moment my heart completely shattered. I told her that she had taken something from me that I could never get back. The chance to ever tell my father the truth, to ever have a real conversation with him about it, to ever hear his voice one last time knowing everything. And she had done it all so selfishly, not even stopping to think about the consequences. My mother scoffed, saying that I was being dramatic. That it wasn't like I had lost anything. She said that my real father was sitting right there, waiting for me to acknowledge him. I turned and looked at him for the first time all evening. He had been sitting silently, his hands folded on the table, watching everything unfold like an observer at a show. He hadn't spoken a word. I asked him if he had anything to say for himself. He hesitated before saying that he had always wanted to be in my life, but circumstances had made it impossible. He said he understood if I was upset, but he hoped we could move past it and start fresh. I told him I had no interest in starting fresh with a stranger. Then I turned back to my mother and said she was no longer invited to my wedding. She blinked as if she hadn't actually considered that possibility. She started saying that I was being ridiculous, that I couldn't seriously mean that. I said that she had made it clear tonight that she didn't respect me, my father's memory, or my wedding. She had turned my rehearsal into a circus, so I was making sure she wouldn't do the same to my actual wedding. She started crying, saying that she was just trying to do something meaningful for me. That she thought I'd be happy. I told her she had mistaken her own selfishness for something meaningful. Then I stood up and told the staff to bring me the guest list. She wasn't going to be on it anymore. My mother sat frozen in her chair as I told the staff to remove her from the guest list. Yes, my wedding planner was there too. I had already warned her of the possibility of drama happening and her staff were ready to step in whenever. For a moment, I thought my mother might finally understand the gravity of what she had done. But then, just as I expected, she let out an incredulous laugh, shaking her head as if I were the ridiculous one. She said I was taking things too far. She insisted that this was just a miscommunication, that I was acting out of shock, and that she was willing to sit down and have a calm conversation about this. I told her there was nothing to discuss. She made it clear that she had zero respect for me, my father's memory, and my wedding, and there was no coming back from that. She scoffed and said I couldn't possibly mean it. She said I was letting my emotions get the best of me, and I would regret this decision later. Luke finally spoke up. He told her that I had every right to feel betrayed, and if she truly cared about me, she would have never pulled a stunt like this in the first place. She waved him off, saying he didn't understand because he wasn't a mother. She said that one day when I had children of my own, I would see things differently. She said she wanted me to be happy because now my real father got to walk me down the aisle. She told us to let bygones be bygones. I told her that if being a mother meant behaving like her, then I wanted no part of it. I told her that her husband was never going to walk me anywhere, much less down the aisle at my wedding. That shut her up for a second, but then she switched tactics. Her eyes welled up with tears as she said she never meant to hurt me. She claimed she thought she was giving me a gift by finally telling me the truth, that she thought I would be happy to have my real father by my side on my wedding day. I turned to the man she kept referring to as my real father and asked him what he thought about all this. He looked uncomfortable but said that he had always wanted to know me and had been waiting for the right time. I asked him if the right time just happened to be 2 days before my wedding, at my rehearsal dinner, in front of my entire family and friends. He had nothing to say to that. I told him that if he truly cared about getting to know me, he wouldn't have let my mother spring this on me in the most humiliating way possible. I told him that if he had an ounce of decency, he would have reached out privately and given me a choice in the matter. Instead, he sat there and let her do all the talking like he was waiting to see how I would react before deciding whether or not he wanted to claim me. He started to protest, but I wasn't interested in hearing it. I turned back to my mother and told her she wasn't coming to my wedding. Not as a guest, not as a mother, and definitely not as the woman who thought she could rewrite my entire life story to fit her convenience. She looked at me like I had slapped her. She said I was breaking her heart. I told her she broke mine first. Then I turned and walked away. Luke followed, and as soon as we got outside, we got into the car, and as we pulled away from the venue, my phone started buzzing relentlessly. My mother was calling over and over, alternating between furious texts and dramatic voicemails about how I was destroying our family. She said she couldn't believe I would throw her away like this, that she had done everything for me, and this was how I repaid her. I told her she should have thought about destroying the family before she had an affair for decades, and then I blocked her number. The next morning, my phone was flooded with messages from relatives. Some were on my side, saying they couldn't believe what she had done and that I had every right to cut her off. Others took a more neutral approach, saying they understood why I was upset but hoped for the best. And, of course, there were the ones trying to guilt trip me, telling me that at the end of the day, she was still my mother and I should find it in my heart to forgive her and to ignore her affair partner, aka her current husband, if it made me feel better. I ignored them all. I had a wedding to focus on, and I refused to let her ruin it any further. Update 1. By the time the rehearsal dinner disaster had settled, my mother had moved on to the next phase of her plan, playing the victim. I really didn't want to deal with her a day before my wedding. I wanted to go to my father's grave and ask for his blessings today, but with what face do I go down there and ask him? She started telling anyone who would listen that I had overreacted, that she had only been trying to do something special for me, and that I had cruelly thrown her out of my wedding over a simple misunderstanding. She conveniently left out the part where she had lied to me my entire life. Or the part where she had reduced my father's death to nothing more than an inconvenience so she could finally reveal her secret. Or the part where she had handed me a DNA test like it was some kind of wedding gift. The worst part? Some people actually bought into her sob story. My aunt, her sister, called me up, saying that while she didn't agree with how my mother handled things, she thought I should be the bigger person. She said that my mother was heartbroken and just wanted to make amends. I asked her if my mother had apologized. She hesitated before admitting that no, my mother was still insisting she had done nothing wrong. I said I wasn't interested in amends with someone who couldn't even acknowledge their mistakes. Then my mother's husband, my so-called biological father, reached out. He sent a long message saying he understood that I was upset but hoped I would give him a chance. He said that he had been waiting for this moment for years and wanted nothing more than to be in my life. I questioned him why hadn't he told me this before my mother and him had gotten married. He had so much time. They had so much time. Yet they waited for my rehearsal dinner and absolutely humiliated me. His reasoning was that he wanted to walk me down the aisle. I left his message on read. I had spent my whole life believing I was my father's daughter. The man who raised me, who loved me, who never once made me feel like anything less than his. And now, just days before my wedding, they wanted to rewrite my entire identity for their own convenience? No. I wasn't playing along with their twisted fantasy. So, I doubled down. I called the venue and made sure my mother's name was off every single guest list, seating chart, and access list. I told my wedding planner that under no circumstances was she allowed near the event. I made sure security had a picture of her, just in case she tried to pull anything. And then, just to drive the point home, I sent my mother one final message. I told her that she had made her choice when she decided to drop this bombshell in the most selfish way possible. She had chosen to ruin what was supposed to be one of the happiest moments of my life, and in doing so, she had lost the privilege of being part of my wedding. I told her she wasn't welcome, and if she tried to show up, she would be escorted out. Then I blocked her on everything. She thought she could control my life. She thought she could manipulate me into accepting her version of reality. But she underestimated me. This was my wedding, my life, and I wasn't going to let her dictate how either of them played out. She had made her bed. Now she could lie in it. Update 2. A lot of y'all are asking for a wedding update, so I'll summarize everything as best as I can. The morning of my wedding was peaceful, exactly the way I wanted it. No last-minute drama, no unexpected guests, no tension hanging over me like a dark cloud. Just my bridal party, my soon-to-be husband, and the excitement of the day ahead. Looking back, I don't think I had processed the whole situation. And honestly, I think it was better that way. I didn't want to break down and cry. I just wanted to be happy like my father would have wanted. I didn't want to disappoint him. My mother already had. In my heart, I was always going to be his daughter. I could feel it. And nobody was going to tell me otherwise. I had kept everything locked down tight. My mother was officially cut off from any involvement, and after the chaos she caused at the rehearsal, I had made sure she wouldn't have any way of crashing the actual wedding. Yet, despite all my precautions, a part of me still expected her to pull something. I had spent my whole life dealing with her selfish antics. Why would she suddenly back down now? But as I sat in the bridal suite getting my hair and makeup done, sipping on champagne with my bridesmaids, something strange happened. Nothing. There were no frantic phone calls. No texts demanding to be let in. No random family members trying to pressure me into changing my mind. It was quiet. Luke had checked in earlier, making sure I was okay, and he told me that security was fully aware of the situation. If my mother even so much as stepped foot near the venue, she would be escorted out immediately. He also told me that my father's family had handled everything. There wouldn't be any drama. I didn't know how to feel at that moment, but that reassurance allowed me to finally let go of the stress. I almost thought they would disown me. I was scared about the future, but this was my day. My moment. The ceremony was beautiful. Luke and I exchanged our vows in front of our loved ones, surrounded by warmth and love. My dad's side of the family had all shown up, offering their full support. And as I walked down the aisle, it was my uncle, the man who had stepped up for me when my father passed, who had the honor of giving me away. I knew my dad wasn't there physically, but I felt him with me. It wasn't about DNA. It was about love. By the time the reception rolled around, I felt light and happy. My uncle told me that I would always be my father's daughter no matter what my mother and her DNA test said. I cried when I heard that. I couldn't hold back any longer. My aunt was trying to dab the tears before they ruined my makeup, which was funny. Guests laughed, danced, and enjoyed themselves. The food was great, the music was perfect, and most importantly, there was no drama. One of my cousins from my mother's side hesitated before approaching me, looking uncomfortable. She admitted that my mother had been blowing up several relatives' phones all day, begging for updates, demanding someone sneak her in, and when that failed, attempting to guilt trip everyone into feeling bad for her. I sighed, unsurprised. She had always been like this, turning every situation into something about her. But what my cousin said next caught my attention. Apparently, my mother had taken things a step further. She was spamming everybody with a long, dramatic message about how her only daughter had cruelly banned her own mother from the happiest day of her life, twisting the story to make herself look like the victim. But here's the thing. She expected me to care. She expected me to crumble under the pressure, to feel guilty, to reach out and beg her to stop. She thought she could manipulate me into giving her what she wanted. But she had underestimated me. I didn't care. Let her cry into the void. Let her whine about how unfair it was. Let her tell her sob story to whoever was willing to listen. It didn't change a thing. I was married. I was happy and I was done with her. Update 3. In the days following the wedding, I waited for the inevitable. I expected another dramatic showdown. Maybe even a message from her, full of self-pity and manipulative guilt tripping. Something about how I had broken her heart or how she never expected her own daughter to betray her like this. But nothing came. Not a single call. Not a single text. Not even a passive-aggressive voicemail. It was almost eerie. But then, I realized something. I had set a boundary with my mother and actually enforced it. And she wasn't used to that. She thrived on my reactions, on my attempts to keep the peace, on my fear of upsetting her. But I had taken all of that away from her. I had refused to give her any power over me. And she didn't know what to do with that. Luke and I had left for our honeymoon a few days after the wedding. A full 2 weeks of peace, away from everything and everyone, just the two of us. No stress. No drama. Just pure happiness. And when we returned home, I felt like I had officially closed a chapter in my life. My mother could continue living in her fantasy world if she wanted to. She could rewrite history and pretend she had done nothing wrong. But I wasn't going to be part of it anymore. I was done trying to fix something that was never mine to fix. Some relatives tried to bring her up in conversation, testing the waters, probably wondering if I had cooled down enough to let her back into my life. I shut it down every time. I wasn't interested. The past was the past. I had made my choice. And I had no regrets.